I would like to testify how an American Negro child early development and mindset can be affected by growing up under segregation. And one of those children was me, Claudette Colvin. Um, as I go on, I would like to begin by telling you what it was like living under segregation. I would like to go back to March 2nd, 1955. But first, since I'm limited to time, I will only answer 3 questions. The first question is, why didn't I move when the bus driver asked me to get up? And the second question is, was the civil rights movement a failure or a success? And the third question is, how do you feel that an African American has become President of the United States, Barack Obama? So, going back to the first question. On March the 2nd, we got out of school kind of early. And see, that was a special bus that bused me from my neighborhood to the school I attend. Because that was, remember, that was a white school, only 3 blocks, but I wasn't allowed to attend that school. I had to be bused to a Negro school. So we got out of school early, so I didn't wait for the special bus. It was maybe about 13 of us walked to downtown Montgomery. And I boarded the bus in front of Dr. King Church, which was Bainbridge and Dexter, if you're familiar with Montgomery. So we boarded the bus and we sit where we normally sit for that in the seats that were reserved. But at a time, the label said colored to the rear and white to the front. But you see, under Jim Crow law, you could be asked to move. So the bus driver, as the bus proceeded on down Dexter Avenue, more white passengers got on the bus because the bus routes took you through a predominantly white neighborhood. So this white lady was standing near me, and the bus driver asked for the 4 seats. But see, he had to ask for 4 seats because a white person wasn't allowed to sit in the opposite aisle from a white colored person. So 3 of the students got up, but I was sitting near the window, and I remained seated. And they said, well, why did you remain seated? I remained seated because I told them, history had me glued to the seat. And they said, how is that? That's what the news reporter said. How is that? I said, because February, we were discussing history, and we only had 1 week for Negro History Week, but the faculty said we could do it for the whole month because we was deliberately left out of American history. So to discuss our heroes and the contribution that our people that had made to this country, we had to do it a whole month. And we also had chapel meeting every Fridays. And so one of my instructors, who was my literature teacher, Mrs. Geraldine Nesby, she had us to write essays, and we really went into great detail. So she would lecture to us because she had information that we could not find. Because remember, Britannica only had 2, well, at that time we were called Negro, not African American, 2 Negroes. That was Booker T. Washington and George Washington Carver. And you know, that was a lot of essays about Booker T. Washington and George Washington Carver. But my essay was about what was happening locally. So that's why one of the heroes was Sojourner Truth and Harriet Tubman. Now, really, Harriet Tubman really was no joke. She ran something, the Underground Railroad, was called the Underground Railroad. And it's still so, what underground, with no Underground Railroad in Montgomery, Alabama? So then my instructor said the Underground Railroad were the safe houses and the homes that they fled and was protected along the route to freedom, all the way to Canada. So she talked about how I said, well, I want to be Harriet Tubman. So that day I said, you know what it felt like? It felt like I was standing in the midst in the spirit of two women. One was Harriet Tubman, pushing me down on one shoulder with her hands, and Sojourner Truth was pushing me down with her hands on the other shoulder. And that's why I was glued to the seat. So they said, and then another thing, we discussed locally, what was happening locally, that you couldn't try on clothes in the department store, you had to know your right sizes, and you couldn't try on shoes, forget it. I recall my mother, when Easter holiday come, you know, everybody wanted to dress up, and to get the black patent leather shoes, she had to go and draw the diagram of our feet on a brown paper bag and take it to the store so she could get the exact size. Couldn't try on shoes in the store. And you couldn't drink out the water fountain. There was a colored water fountain and a white water fountain in the department store. And I said, you know, I will never forget the aroma of the 5 and 10 at that time. You know, there was popcorn popping and peanut roasting and a little candy cone you could see through the showcase and all the department store. I just love the 5 and 10. Today, children don't know what the 5 and 10 is. You just had, well, in those days, I knew I was really something else because I was going to shop. I had, in those days, the little kids didn't have wallets like the children today. We had handkerchiefs, and we just tied our little nickels and dimes in the corner of a handkerchief. And I said, oh, no, I'm going to have fun today. And guess what? When I went in the store, I observed white children eating at the lunch counter. And I wanted some of the same sandwich, and they were drinking Coca. Now I found out they were drinking Coca-Cola, and they was eating Club double-decker sandwiches. And so I was sneaked over there while my mother wasn't watching. And my mother came over there, she said, Claudette, and just grabbed me by the back of my collar and pulled me back. And you know what, the first vocabulary word I learned as a kid, and I was about 6 or 7, you know what the word was? White folks. My mom said, that is not for you, that is for white folks. And I was a kid, I couldn't believe it. And right then I knew that was unfair. So all this was going through my mind when I was sitting there. See, I wasn't breaking the law. From Bainbridge Street to Court Square, I could think. That's about 4 bus stops. I could think. So we thought everything was over with. Well, we was at Court Square, nothing else happened. The bus driver didn't get up. He summoned a traffic patrolman. Traffic patrolman came to the back door, and he looked and he saw that I was sitting by myself. And he said, yeah, why are you sitting there? I said, it's my constitution. I pay my fare to my constitutional right. He said, he yelled to the bus driver, I have no jurisdiction here. And he got off the bus. So I thought it was over with because, see, Court Square is a little mini depot, and there's other black people standing there, I said maybe about 15 or 20 more black people, maybe about 15 or 20 more white people, because they're where you make your bus connection. And so when the traffic patrolman got off, another pregnant black woman came on the bus, and she sit next to me because she didn't know the altercation was going on, because we wasn't yelling and making a lot of noise. So she sit next to me, and so By that time, two policemen come on the bus, and they yelled to the back of the bus, "You guys not a gentleman enough to get up and give this lady a seat." So one guy got up and gave Mrs. Hamilton, her name was Mrs. Hamilton, gave her a seat. And that still left me sitting there. I was still sitting there. And this white lady was still standing up. So lo and behold, the bus driver proceeded on to to Bainbridge in the same direction as the regular bus route to Commerce and Bibb Street. And that's when two traffic patrolmen, squad car patrolmen policemen come to the back of the door. And they got there, they saw me sitting there, and they said, "Gal, why are you sitting there?" And I was even more defiant when they said, "Gal, why are you sitting there?" And I said, "It's my constitutional right. I pay my fare." And they said, "Constitutional right." And then all I know, my books went out of my lap, and I don't know how I got off that bus. I really don't know. All I recall, one grabbed one arm and the other grabbed, because I refused to walk off voluntarily. So one grabbed one arm and one grabbed the other and placed me in the squad car. And then, I don't know what happened. They told me to put my hand through the window, and then they handcuffed me, took me to the police station, booked me, and instead of taking me to a juvenile center, they took me to the adult jail. And I tell everybody, and that sound never go. It's like, I cannot explain to you. It's like an old Western movie. You ever seen an old Western movie? And when they lock the guy in the jail cell, you can hear the keys go, click. So I knew I was locked in, and that's when the fear really came over me. Once you're locked in and you can't get out, the fear came over me. And because I'm Baptist, I started praying. I said the 23rd Psalm. I said the Lord's Prayer, and then I started crying. And then we had an assignment about Edgar Allan. We were studying about Edgar Allan Poe, and you know what kind of how eerie Edgar Allan Poe works is. So we had to recite The Raven and some other works of Edgar Allan Poe. Coincidentally come in, because that's the most horrible scene that you could picture, a teenager in a jail cell. So anyway, I stayed there approximately maybe 3 hours or more, and my pastor, Reverend H.H. Johnson, and my mother came to bail me out. And now when we was going back home, we had to go to the path called up the Upper Wetumpka Road, and you was going over the viaduct, and it's not like today modern. It's not modern. It was like back in the 50s, and it was like this honk in the road, in the highway, and you go over this viaduct, and it's a little hump, and you guys can hear the sound of Reverend H.H. Johnson's voice going. He said, "Claudette, I think you done brought the revolution in here." So anyway, I went home, and my dad said, "Oh, Claudette, you done brought a lot of danger on us. We in a lot of danger." And so my dad, you know what my dad did? See, he was a hunter, and the only time black men get shells is during the hunting season. So I don't know, my daddy had some shells up, and he loaded his shotgun. And my dad thought he was sure. But see, we lived on this high elevated area called King Hill, and we were sure that there would be some repercussion from the KKK, because the people lived there behind me was known members of the KKK. So, but anyway, everybody on King Hill got the news that what I had did. They stayed awake. No one slept on King Hill that night. But nothing happened. I mean, Mama said, "You know what? God was protecting you." So anyway, this happened to me, and I would say to most people that my significant role was that they used my case, and as Reverend, they brought Reverend Reverend King in, and all the people in the MIA, the Montgomery Improvement Association, after Mrs. Rosa Parks had got arrested 9 months later, and then to find out that Attorney Fred Gray came and said, "Do you know I have filed a case, we're going to file a case," and asked my parents, did he want me to be a plaintiff? Well, my mom said, they must be desperate, Claudette, because they want you to be a plaintiff. I said, yes. I said, and this mom, and we talked about it, and so I said, yes, Mom, you know I'll be willing. And my parents agreed, and so I became a plaintiff for the case. It was me, as I said, and 3 other women. It was another teenager that got arrested in October, but she kept low profile. And Mrs. Susan McDonald and Mrs. Aurelia Browder, they all had incidents, some kind of altercation on the bus system. But it never, you know, so anyway, I was glad to be a plaintiff, and I had to testify. You know, I really had to testify in the state court. And at least all four of us had to testify. And it went to the Supreme Court, and then later it got back that we had won the case and that the buses would be desegregated. So I would like to say I did play a significant role in desegregating the bus. But the second question I would like to say is, do you think that young people, I live in the Bronx, and a lot of young people say, oh, the civil rights movement was no failure. I said, first you have to understand that was a law in the South. There was segregation, that it meant that no interracial marriages. Yeah, but it was a double standard because white men and a black woman would not be punished, persecuted, or prosecuted. And a black man and a white woman, the black man would be lynched, and the white woman run out of town. Well, in other words, I told him, in other words, do you understand that would not have been a Barack Obama? And if his parents lived in Montgomery, Alabama, his father would have been dead and his mother been chased out of town. And I said, there were signs, I tell you, signs. I said, Dr. King had to clear the way because he broke down help by protesting. It was symbolic. And then there was the brilliant attorneys like Attorney Fred, I have to call Attorney Fred Gray, Thurgood Marshall, and Robert Carter. All these men strategized how to break down segregation nonviolently through the court system, to the judicial system. So that's, I said, in the rest that was undone, you have to finish it. You have to pick up the torch and go and carry it to the finish line. So they would say, then they look at me, I didn't know you could. I said, yes, that was the law. I said, if you was white, you had your boundaries, and if you were colored, you had your boundaries. But they made it sure that the white people didn't have to go over here on the colored people's side. They provided all the resources for the white people, but colored people had to be on their best behavior when they go on the white side to shop, to shop for, for merchandise or downtown area, whatever. But there were signs. And so I said, Doctor, that's why you had the lunch counter sit-ins. And I said, there was a whole lot. And it broke out. And I said, it branched out from what Dr. King was successful doing. It branched out into other different movements, like the Black Panther movement, the Black Power movement. You know, you had other guys coming in, getting involved in civil rights. And I said, now, like I said, you have to pick up the torch and take it to the finish line, or as far as you can. And the third question I want to ask, how I felt when Barack Obama was president. I was jumping up and shouting like a Baptist just got converted. I was just saying, but I know Barack Obama can rectify, is that correctly said? For what was done to African America for 400 years or more. It's going to take more and more hard work, and everyone have to participate in helping this bill. You know, I speak out for injustice in any form, speak out up. If you're the only one, you just speak out because you know it's the right thing to do. And I said, what we want to do as a race, and as not only as a race, but as Americans, we want this law, we want to progress. We do not want to regress. And that is my story. Thank you.